When the Secretary of Defense says no quarter, he's not just talking tough. He's invoking a phrase that means killing enemy soldiers even if they surrender. And it's a war crime. Hi, I'm Nate Charles, and welcome back to the Rule of Law Brief. Let's talk about what no quarter actually means, because most people using that phrase don't understand it. And in a military context, that's not just sloppy, it's dangerous. Because words like this don't just describe war, they shape it. No quarter has a very specific meaning under the law of armed conflict. It means this: no prisoners will be taken. Even if enemy forces surrender, they will not be spared. They will be killed. That's the definition. Not we're going to fight really hard or we're not backing down. It means surrender will not be accepted. And that is illegal. Not controversial, not debatable, flatly illegal. The law here is not ambiguous, and it hasn't been for over a century. Under the Hague Convention of 1907, it was explicitly forbidden to declare that no quarter would be given. That rule is reinforced in the additional Protocol 1 to the Geneva Conventions, which prohibits ordering that there be no survivors, threatening that outcome, or conducting operations on that basis. And this isn't just treaty law. It's recognized as customary international law, meaning it binds all parties to a conflict. The United States military adopts this rule in its own doctrine as well. The U.S. Department of Defense Law of War Manual makes it clear that refusing surrender or declaring no quarter is unlawful and can constitute a war crime. This is not a gray area. This is one of the clearest prohibitions in the entire law of armed conflict, because customary laws of armed conflict depend on one core idea. Once a combatant surrenders, they're no longer a lawful target. They are hors de combat in law French. If you remove that rule, you remove any incentive to surrender. And when that happens, wars don't become more efficient, they become more brutal. Now, to be fair, sometimes people use phrases like no quarter metaphorically. They don't literally mean they're going to execute surrendering soldiers. But that distinction breaks down at the highest levels of government. When you are the Secretary of Defense, there's no such thing as casual rhetoric. Your words are policy signals. They are interpreted by allies, adversaries, and the troops who may be asked to carry out those implications. So it's worth asking a more fundamental question. Why is the Secretary of Defense using words like that at all? Because this isn't accidental language. It reflects a deeper mindset. Pete Hegseth is operating like a field-grade officer trapped in the body of the Secretary of Defense. Look at the pattern. There is a consistent emphasis in Pete Hegseth on optics and superficial toughness, the kinds of things that play well at the small unit level, but have very little to do with strategic leadership. You see it when he goes out and does PT with the troops, something that might make sense for a field-grade officer trying to build rapport with his reports, but which is largely irrelevant to the actual responsibilities of the Secretary of Defense. You see it when he brought together senior admirals and generals, flag officers responsible for global operations, and then focused most of that conversation on body weight standards and grooming. Those are not strategic issues. Those are the kinds of issues handled by senior non-commissioned officers. They are not the focus of flag officers, and they are certainly not the focus of the Secretary of Defense. And this gets to the underlying problem. The Secretary of Defense is not a company-grade officer. He's not a field-grade officer. He's not a senior NCO. When you're the Secretary of Defense, your job is not to protect toughness or enforce day-to-day standard. The job is to think in terms of escalation control, proportionate response, long-term strategic planning, maintenance of strategic and international alliances, long-term force development, and the legal frameworks that govern armed conflict. But when you bring a small unit leader mindset into a strategic role, you start to get flippant use of terms of art like no quarter. That language sounds tough, but it carries real legal meaning, real diplomatic consequences, and real risks. When you are the Secretary of Defense, there is no such thing as just rhetoric. Every word signals intent. Every word shapes behavior. And if you don't understand that distinction, you're not just speaking loosely, you're in the wrong job.